Good afternoon and welcome to the next concurrent session of the day, Quantitative Reasoning with Hawks Learning. Our presenter today is August Robertson. August Robertson is an assistant lecturer of mathematical sciences at Ball State University, where she earned both their BA in actuarial science and MA in statistics. Additionally, she serves as the Math 125 Quantitative Reasoning course coordinator. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Thanks, Victoria. If you just give me a second here, I'm going to share my screen. So thank you everyone for being here today. I'm excited to share with you all how we are using Hawks Learning with our quantitative reasoning at Ball State University. So as Victoria mentioned, my name is August Robertson. I am the Math 125 Quantitative Reasoning course coordinator here at Ball State. So in addition to teaching, I do this as to service to my department. But a little bit about what I do as the course coordinator. So my responsibilities are to provide all the necessary course materials to the faculty that are going to be teaching the course, as well as schedule trainings for new faculty, and just provide things like a syllabus template, course calendar. We have a Canvas shell that we all use, as well as in-class assignments. So I want to start by telling you guys a little bit about Math 125 at Ball State University. So we have historically had a traditional classroom with, the traditional lecture and homework outside of the classroom. And then in 2013, we switched to a flipped classroom. So we're coming up on about 10 years of having that flipped classroom approach, where we do a short lecture in class, and then students get a chance to work on their homework or work on group assignments while they're in that classroom. We implemented Hawks in the summer of 2021. So we started our book search for a new textbook in the beginning of 2020 with high hopes of implementing that the following fall. But of course, we all know what happened a few months later. And so we did have to delay our implementation until the fall of 2021. So what I did in the summer is I worked with Hawks to put together our Hawks curriculum and kind of redo our course so that we could implement our new textbook in this Hawks learning system in the fall of 2021. So a little bit about why we chose Hawks. We at Ball State, our textbook committee, we really liked Hawks' three-part learning platform. So we liked the idea that students could get into the textbook, the section that they were focusing on, in the Learn very easily. So in previous texts that we've used with learning platforms, it wasn't always easy for students to get to their e-text. And we really liked that students could get into that Learn or the textbook material from one place where they're going to go see the textbook material for that section, as well as the homework, and everything was in one place and very easily accessible. We also really liked the practice and certify features in Hawks. We liked that students had this consequence-free environment in practice where they could work through these problems and have learning aids available, do them as many times as they wanted to, and really practice the material and learn the material in this consequence-free environment. So this wasn't for a grade, and very low stakes in terms of them actually learning the material and digging into that material. And then also the certify. So we have this mastery-based approach to their graded homework. And that was really appealing to us because in our previous text and previous texts that we had used, the learning aids were still available when students were working on the assignment. So the practice and the graded homework was all combined into one thing. So students could still use those learning aids as they were working on that homework. And here with Hawks, that certify, they no longer have those learning aids. So the goal would be that they would truly learn the assignments and the types of problems that we wanted them to in practice with those learning aids, and then they would have to show us that they had mastery over that material. So we really liked that whole learning platform and those three parts that were to it. In addition, we like that we can customize the Learn screens. So we can do that on our own if we want to add material to a particular section, if we want to add handouts that the students view, we can very easily customize those Learn screens and customize what our students are going to see. We also really like the abundance of reports that are available within Hawks, and just so much information to dig into within those reports. And so I'm going to actually talk about some of those towards the end of the presentation today. But we really liked how much data we could look at on our students and really see patterns in their learning within those reports and how things were going. So I'll share a little bit about those towards the end. In addition, Hawks customer service, I have to say that it's probably, in my opinion, the best out there. We really liked that the customer service is not only for the instructors, but also for the students. They have the 24/7 chat option. I've worked with Laura and Shriver to implement Hawks into Math 125, and they are always super responsive, and they've been so helpful, not only to me, but to the other instructors that are teaching the course. And really the customer service was one of the things that really sold us on implementing the Hawks learning system. So for our Hawks at Ball State University, at the same time that we were going to be implementing the new text and the new learning system, we were asked by our college dean to also focus on section consistency. So at Ball State, Math 125 is our core curriculum math class, and we service about 1,000 students a semester and have about 30 sections each semester. So we have a lot of sections. We have a lot of students that are taking the course. So it's a core curriculum, like I said. That means that any students that don't have math as a requirement in their major are required to take Math 125 to satisfy that core. We also have a variety of instructors that teach Math 125 here at Ball State. So we have tenure line faculty, non-tenure line faculty. We have some adjunct faculty, as well as GAs that teach Math 125. So we have a lot of sections and a lot of different instructors. So one of the things that our dean wanted us to focus on was having some consistency across all sections, with the hope that any student that went into Math 125 would come away with a very similar experience. So what we did with Hawks is we're using a master curriculum. So that means that the curriculum is locked. Our instructors cannot change that curriculum. So I have access to it. And what that does is allow all sections to use the same homework. We all use the same Learn screen, so our students all have the same experience within Hawks. This also allows me to make changes if needed, and those changes are automatically pushed out to all of the instructors, as opposed to having to contact everybody and say, please make this change to your curriculum. This master curriculum just allows us to push that out to everybody. We also use the Hawks due date templates. So we have a master course calendar, and what I do is make the due date templates for all of those different classes. So we have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday sections, Tuesday, Thursday sections, as well as Monday, Wednesday sections, and then online sections. So our schedule differs a little bit for each scheduled class. And so I put together due date templates based on the class calendars for each of those different types of sections. Instructors do have a little bit of flexibility within those due date templates. Some instructors like to release their homework for all the sections at the beginning of a chapter. Others like to gradually release them. So we do give some flexibility in terms of those due date templates, but they are provided as a starting point for all instructors and match that class calendar that we have. And then in addition, we also use the late penalty templates within the Hawks system. Again, this is an area where our instructors have a little bit of flexibility. Some instructors prefer to not accept any late work and instead drop some assignments, while others like to have a graduated late penalty. So we give our instructors some flexibility on their late penalties, but we do provide those templates so that they can just choose them and everything is just ready to go for them. One of the other things that we at Ball State really liked about Hawks Learning was how easy it is to pair with Canvas. It's easy for the instructors and it's also easy for the students. So students have a single sign-on link that is within Canvas, and as soon as they click on that link, they're automatically registered in the appropriate section and automatically get the start of that 21-day complimentary access. So with systems that we've used in the past, sometimes getting students registered and getting everyone in the free trial and all of those things is a little complicated, but with Hawks, pairing our sections with Canvas is super easy, and getting students registered, like I said, they just have to click on that one link and everything happens automatically. So that was very desirable for us in terms of getting students started at the beginning of the semester. And then in addition, for instructors, we can deep link our assignments. So students can very easily see, which assignment they have to do. They can click on that and it takes them directly to that Learn, Practice, and Certify screen for that specific section. And then also the automatic grade sync. So that automatically brings our grades over to Canvas, happens every day. We don't have to worry about whether or not student grades get into our Canvas gradebook. So that was also something that we very much liked about the Hawks system. So a little bit more about what we do at Ball State in our Math 125 class. We focus on 3 units: the finance unit, the probability, and statistics. So we go through 3 chapters within the Hawks text, and we do go through all sections of those chapters. And what I want to show you is kind of what a typical section of course material looks like in our classrooms. So because we are using a flipped classroom, our students do some preparation before they come to class. We have them go through the Hawks Learn as class preparation. And one of the things that we have for our students, or a resource that we have that some instructors use, not everyone does, but I use these and some of our other instructors do, is the guided notes. So these guided notes, here's an example of what they look like for section 9.3. The guided notes have space in them for students to define important terms. They have all of the important formulas that are included in the Learn section, as well as all of the examples that students are going to see in Learn, with space for them to work through those directly on their notes. That way they aren't just taking notes on a notebook paper and going through and doing the examples, but then when they go back to review their notes, they don't really know what the example was that they worked through in their notebook paper. So the guided notes have everything that they need. They are an optional resource for students. They're not graded. Students don't have to turn them in, but it's just a resource for them to help them go through the Learn in kind of an organized way. So then, in addition to the guided notes, we have students take a Canvas Learn quiz before they come to class. So we wanted some way to hold our students accountable for actually going through Learn, because with the flipped classroom, while we do mini lectures within class, we're not going through every single detail of what the students see and learn. So we wanted to kind of incentivize them or hold them accountable for actually going through Learn and being prepared before they came to class. So before we had Hawks, we had students watch videos and then they would work through a few problems that were graded as part of their class preparation. So with Hawks, we had to kind of change our direction a little bit. And what we decided to do was make these Canvas Learn quizzes. So the quizzes, the questions on the quiz, they come directly from the Learn information. So if students have gone through, they've taken notes, they'll be able to find the answers to these questions directly in their notes or in the Learn material. It is open book, open note, so it's a very low stakes assignment, usually 4 to 5 questions and worth 10 points. So all of these together for every section are worth 10% of the student's grade overall. So again, it's a very low stakes assignment, but just reiterating what they should have seen and learned and what they should have learned as they went through their material. We were very conscious about what we chose to put in these quizzes. Since the students are going through Learn and they haven't been to class yet to, talk to their instructor or hear what their instructor is going to say about the material or work through examples with their instructor, we didn't want to put any actual math problems from that section within these Learn quizzes because the students haven't been to class yet, okay? And we also knew that that's what practice is for. We already have that, practice that they're going to go through, and that's where they're going to really learn how to do these different types of problems. So we didn't want students working problems before they had been to class and getting frustrated with the material. So we were very conscious in the types of questions that we chose. Sometimes we'll ask them to enter an answer to one of the examples that they worked and learned or something like that, but we never ask them to work new questions or new types of questions in these Learn Canvas quizzes. So here is an example of one of those quizzes. So these are the types of questions that we ask. So this one in this section, one of the things that they had written down as a definition. And so we asked which of the following is equal to the total income minus all taxes. That was part of their guided notes, part of what they saw in the Learn section. So they should be able to look back at those notes and answer that. And then question 2 was to just select the steps in creating the budget in an appropriate order. Again, this was something that students saw while they were in the Learn material. You can see that each question is worth a different number of points. So it just kind of depends on what they're being asked to do, as well as the number of questions within the quiz. Again, they're each worth 10 points, and overall, all of them together are 10% of their grade. So I want to show you a little bit about our Canvas modules that the students see. This is where they access these Learn quizzes and where they access all of the necessary information for each section. So in the Canvas shell that's provided to instructors, there's a module for each section that we go through in the course. So in these modules, there's a section learning guide, the Learn quiz, and then our in-class assignments. All instructors are provided that information. And then this is actually a screenshot of one of my modules. So I had a couple of things in there to tell students when they have to have the Learn done by. And within that is where my guided notes are when they click on that link. And then I also just tell them when they have to complete practice. So they receive a course calendar at the beginning of the semester, but as we know, students don't always keep those papers that we give them, or they misplace them. So I am very cautious to make sure that I also put everything on Canvas for them as well. And then the last thing that you see in this module is the 9.3 Saving Money Certified graded homework. So that is the deep link to the Hawks certify section, they can click on that to get to that learn, practice, and certify screen directly if they don't want to click on the single sign-on link. So I try to have all of the necessary information for them in each of these Canvas modules. So here's an example of what this learning guide looks like for students. So the goal is ideally students will look at these Canvas modules before they come to class when they're accessing Learn and taking that Learn quiz. So the top link in their module is this learning guide, which gives them a short overview of what they're going to be seeing in this section, as well as the section objectives. And then the last thing that they see in their learning guide is their to-do list. So these are the tasks that they're going to have to complete to be successful for this section, and then just the order in which they're going to be completing these tasks. So it just gives them an overview of what this section is going to look like, kind of the things that they're going to be doing in class, outside of class, throughout this section. So then once students come to class, for a new section, this is kind of what we do in class. So we have new section class time day 1. So once students get to class, they've done their Learn, they've done their Learn quiz, they have an idea of what we're going to be discussing in class. Instructors give a mini lecture at the beginning of class. Some big idea overviews of what the students saw. For example, I'll talk about any formulas that they saw in their Learn, just kind of the main ideas that they learned about. I'll often expand on those a little bit. And then we do some examples together as a class. So that is sometimes instructor-led. Other times the students will get into small groups and work through the examples together, and then we'll come back together as a class and go through those as well, and make sure that students understand and are able to complete those. The examples that are provided in class are usually directly out of the practice and certify, so it's the same types of examples that students are going to see once they get into that practice and that they're going to have to know how to do for certify. So even though we are implementing and using the flipped classroom, we do still give these mini lectures at the beginning of each section to make sure students really know what they need to know, and kind of give an expansion on those ideas and make sure that they understand the material that they saw in Learn. So typically the lecture and examples, so our Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes are 50 minutes. If it's a 2-day-a-week class, then they have 75 minutes, and that schedule looks a little bit different because instructors have to cover a little bit more each class period. But in our typical 50-minute class session, the lectures and examples will last anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, just kind of depends on if the examples are instructor-led or if students work in small groups and then we come back together as a class. But that leaves then 20 to 30 minutes for students to get into that Hawks practice for that section while they are still in class. So what this does is allows students to have instructor support and peer support. So we allow them to work together on their practice and talk to each other. Now, we have our practice problems in a random order, so students aren't going to necessarily see the exact same question at the exact same time, but they will still often help each other as they're sitting next to each other. Every once in a while, they'll end up on the same type of question at the same time, and they'll help each other through that. But we really encourage students to talk to each other, to ask questions, to help each other, as well as ask questions to the instructor as they're walking around as well. We ask students to then complete that practice before they come to the next class. So that they have gone through all of those problems, they have that next class period then to ask any questions. So I always tell my students to mark or make note of any questions in practice that they struggled with, or they weren't able to get the right answer, or maybe they didn't understand the explanation that was given in Hawks, or just have questions about it. So students are supposed to complete that practice before the next class, mark anything that they had questions about, so that when they come to class on day 2 of that section, they can ask those questions. So then on day 2, our class time consists of an in-class group activity that expands on the concepts of that particular section. So we have been using the Hawks section activities. Those were new this academic year, and we've been using those for the sections that they are available within class. Our students do work in groups. Part of our flipped classroom model is also a lot of active learning, so students working together in groups with both the peer support and instructor support. So students work on these activities in groups during class time, and these don't usually take the entire class period. So typically they will take 30-35 minutes or so, and students will have 15 to 20 minutes after they finish their activity to ask questions to the instructor. So if they had any questions on practice as they went through it between class periods, they can ask those questions. They can work together to kind of finish up that practice if they haven't done that yet, or they have a little bit of time then to get started on certified for that particular lesson. So our goal really is for students to have as much time in class to work on the material as possible. But in addition, we do still give those mini lectures and, guided examples as instructors. So then at the end of day 2 for that new section, then students have to complete certify before they come to the next class period. And then they'll also go into learn, and that learn quiz for the new section. So that's kind of our rolling calendar. So here's just a screenshot of one of my sections. So the calendar that students get at the beginning of the semester. Again, so it shows them what they need to complete before they come to class. For here, it was Friday, the January 21st. So students needed to complete the 9.1 learn material in Hawks and then take that 9.1 quiz in Canvas. And then it also shows students exactly what they'll be doing in class for that particular day. So that was day 1 of section 9.1. So we did that overview and examples, and then students had time to get into that 9.1 practice. So this kind of just shows you the flow of how each section works. One of the things that's was really important to us was to give students that class period in between completing practice and before they had to start certify, so that students had the opportunity to ask questions in class if there was anything that they were struggling with before they had to start the graded portion of their assignment. So I mentioned earlier about the Hawks reports and how much information there is, and that was one of kind of the selling points for us for the learning system. And so I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about the different types of reports that I use. This is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the information that's available, but these are the ones that I use the most often. So first is this assignment reviewer. So what I can do is I can go into my section and I can click on this assignment reviewer report, and it shows me how many students have completed certify for each section, how many students completed it late, or how many have not done it yet, it's overdue. I will typically take a look at this report before class and just kind of see if there's any students who are working ahead, they've already completed certify, or after the due date of certify, I'll look at this report, and any students who haven't completed it, I will sometimes reach out to them and just say, hey, I noticed that you haven't completed the certify yet. Are you struggling with anything in particular? Is there anything that I can help you with to get it done? My class personally, I have a graduated late penalty, so students can do assignments up to 3 days late and still get some credit. So I do try to pay attention to how many students are showing as overdue so that I can reach out to them and hopefully they can complete that assignment before they can't get any credit for it. I personally don't allow students to have late assignments after those 3 days for a couple of reasons. In our Math 125 classes at Ball State, we don't have a cumulative final. So we just have a chapter test for each of the chapters. So really, it's imperative that students get that assignment done while we're still working within the chapter, because once we take that chapter test, then we kind of set that material aside and move on to the next chapter. So that's one of the reasons that I have that graduated late penalty, so that students can still complete the work a few days late, or if they're struggling with something, they have time to talk to me about that and still get some credit for that assignment. Then if you go just below that report, that's at the top of that report, then I can scroll down and I can look at all of my sections, and see how many of my students have completed certified for that section. I can see how much time a student has spent in Learn, or on average our students have spent in Learn, as well as on average how much time they spent in Practice and in Certify. So it just kind of gives me an overview of the class as a whole, kind of how they did in each of those sections, or how they're doing as they're working through those different sections. Then I can complete or click on one of the sections and look at everything, kind of drill down to student specific information. So these are screenshots of one of my actual reports. So I kind of had to modify these a little bit so I didn't have any student information on them. But this here is a student's summary in this assignment reviewer. So I can see that the student attempted Certify just one time. I can see when the student completed it, as well as how much time that specific student spent in Learn, in Practice, and in Certify. So some of the things that I look at in this report specifically is the number of attempts that a student has made in Certify, as well as the amount of time they spent in Learn and Practice. Now, I feel like this is a pretty ideal example of a student. So this student spent 36 minutes in Learn. So they probably went through all the material, took notes, went through the examples. And then they spent 42 minutes in Practice. And so that tells me that they probably went through every question in Practice and really spent some time in there learning and understanding the different questions. And then you notice that their Certified time is actually lower than the amount of time they spent in Practice. And that is what we would ideally expect. I always stress with my students that the goal is for them to spend the majority of their time working through Practice. Because again, this is where students are learning the questions, learning the material, have those learning aids available, work through the questions as many times as you need to. And then ideally, Certify wouldn't take you all that much time because you know how to do the questions, you understand them, and then you just go in and certify, and that should be done fairly quickly. So this is a good example, I guess, of what I like to see when I look at this report for my students. If this student, for example, had attempted Certify 3 times and they still hadn't completed it, and they spent, say, 5 minutes in Learn and 10 minutes in Practice, right? But they've attempted Certify 3 times, so their time in Certify is probably going to be pretty high. This is a case where I would reach out to that student and kind of talk to them and say, hey, it looks like you're struggling. You've attempted Certify 3 times and you haven't reached mastery yet. So let's talk a little bit about your strategy. So I noticed that you didn't spend very much time in Learn and you're not utilizing Practice in the way that we're hoping that you will. So then just kind of talk to them about not just spending all of their time in the graded portion, the more high stakes portion of the system, but really focusing them back onto that practice, and then even back to learn, we're looking at that material before they come to class. A lot of times if a student has attempted certify 3 times and they haven't certified, they're reaching out to me before I reach out to them. And they're saying, I can't do this, I don't get it, I've spent hours in certify and I'm not sure, what I'm doing wrong. And that's when we can really use this report to look at their learn time and their practice time and kind of guide them back into that, the correct path that we want them to use for the learning system.
Professor Robertson, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give you a quick 10-minute time warning just for question and answer tab.
All right, great. I am almost done.
Take your time. Thank you.
Yep. So then the other thing in this report is I can click directly on each attempt for the student. And that's what this bottom picture here on this screen shows. It shows me, which questions the student got correct. So this is the same student. They attempted it one time and were able to certify. So they got 12 questions correct. But I can see how much time they spent in each question. Sometimes I'll look and I'll see that there's like 3 attempts, but one attempt was they answered 1 or 2 questions and then they quit. Or something like that. But here I can look at what questions they got correct, what questions they got incorrect. And then the little stars next to like 10 and 11, we have Flex Mastery activated. So instead of getting a strike for getting a question wrong, students have the option to try a similar question. So that just indicates to me that they tried that question a second time before they got it correct. But you can really drill down into each student and what they're doing and looking at their attempts and really guide them in their learning. So the last part of this report that I just want to talk about is the item analysis. So on this same screen, I can click over to the analytics tab and I can bring up this item analysis for this particular assignment. So this tells me the percentage of my students that got the question correct and the percentage of my students that got the question incorrect. So what I look for here is high percentages of incorrect. So on this particular report, number 11 would stick out to me. And because 50% of my students got it wrong. So what I can do then is click on the blue 11 and it will bring up a question for that type of question, right? So this is just an example of what students saw for question 11. I can bring this up in class. So this analytics report does not have any student identifying information on it. So I can bring this report up in class, click on that question, and then bring this question up at the beginning of class and say, okay, 50% of you missed this on your certify. Let's review this. Let's talk through it and work on it to make sure that everybody understands this question. So it's just really a great report to use in class and in front of your students and with your students. So again, this is really just the tip of the iceberg for the reports. There's so much information that you can have on your students and look at, but these are just the reports that I use most often in my classroom. So with that, is there any questions?
Thank you, Professor Robertson. We do actually have a question at this time. The question is, some students do not study or work before classes. Do you experience this with a flipped classroom when your flipped classroom is in place? And if so, how do you handle that drawback to help students proceed?
Right, so that is definitely, one of the tricky things about a flipped classroom is trying to get the students to really do that preparation work. And we put those learn quizzes in place really to try to reiterate that. Now, do some of my students go in and just answer those questions probably without going all the way through learn? I'm sure that they do, but at the very least, we hope that it will have them open learn and, have to search for those answers. One thing that I didn't mention with those learn quizzes is they are not accepted late. So students can't do them after that class period. And that was also to hopefully encourage students to complete that work before they come to class. But if I notice a student is missing, not doing the learn quizzes and missing the learn quizzes, I will, try to kind of take them aside and talk to them about what's going on. The mini lectures do kind of, overlap that a little bit though. So even if students haven't done all the work to prepare for class, we still have that mini lecture and those examples that we work through to hopefully give them at least that foundation if they haven't done that preparation.
Excellent. Thank you for submitting questions, everyone. Please continue to enter those into the Q&A box at this time. We do have another question for you, Professor Robertson. This is from Miss Bowie, Carolyn Bowie. Are your certifies timed? And if so, what is your average time limit for certifies? And what is your maximum number of certify attempts?
Okay, so that's a good question. Certifies are not timed. Students can spend as much time working on a certify attempt as they want to. We do limit the number of times that they can pause their certify session though. So the most that they can pause it is 3 times. And then after that 4th time, it's not going to save their progress and they'll have to come back and start completely over. So they can take as much time as they want. Sorry, I forgot what the second part of the question was.
Yes, let me pull that back up. I had already hidden it. Let's see.
Oh, the maximum number of attempts.
The maximum
okay.
number.
So we also don't have a maximum number of times that they can attempt. However, we have in place that if a student fails at their attempt at certify, they are forced back into practice and they have to complete 80% of the practice problem before they can attempt certify again. Because ideally we don't want them, attempting certified multiple times. We want to spend that time in practice, really understanding and learning those questions. So we don't have a maximum number of attempts, but they do have to go back and complete practice each time that they, fail to reach mastery before they can attempt it again.
Thank you so much. We have another question. This is more of a course question. Did I hear that you only use 3 chapters of content? That's from Brenna Capon.
Yes, we do only use 3 chapters. We have the finance, the probability, and the statistics chapter. And we spread those out because we do those in-class assignments and group work for each section. We spend, more than one class period or one class day on each section. And then with our statistics chapter, we kind of have a big data analysis project that students work on within that chapter. So yeah, we just cover those 3 chapters each semester.
Excellent. Thank you so much. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A box at this time. Oh, we have another one from Ms. Bowie. Is this a 3 credit course?
Yeah, 3 credit hours. Yep.
Thank you. Looks like we may have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to enter those in at this time. I'll just say I enjoyed hearing how you enjoy using Assignment Reviewer. I think that's one of the best reports in the reports tab. So
it really is. Yeah.
It was good to hear how you've enjoyed that as an instructor.
Yeah, it's definitely very useful. It's my go-to report. So use that one all the time.
Awesome. We have one from Mr. Paulin relating to one of the questions above. I've used the flipped classroom using Hawks and have had students take notes and check their notebook for a grade.
Oh yeah, Yeah, and that's something I have considered. And when we were actually online, I had students turn in their notes for a grade. But yeah, I like that idea. I like, that helps hold them accountable for doing that pre-class work.
Absolutely. Well, we have one more question. I think that's perfect timing. Thank you everyone for your engagement. One word from Ty Non. What is your overview observations when changing from a traditional classroom to flipped and then to Hawks?
Okay, so I was not at Ball State when we taught Math 125 as a traditional classroom. I came in after it was already a flipped classroom. So I don't necessarily have some observations on how the difference is. I run all of my classrooms, not just my Math 125 class, but I try to run all my classrooms kind of in that same flipped nature. But I always do that brief overview and that brief lecture. I really feel like, so I sometimes call my classroom a modified flipped classroom because I do that lecture and do those examples with students, because I do feel like that instruction is still important. But I just feel like the flipped classroom keeps students engaged. They're not just sitting there listening to me, and kind of nodding off and things like that. They're actively involved in working through the material. And honestly, with Hawks, I feel like this system works perfectly with that flipped classroom because of the learn and because of the practice. We've been able to integrate it very seamlessly into our flipped classroom model.
That's awesome. That makes me happy to hear. Well, and Mr. Polland shared in the chat as well, if anyone is interested, he has some of his flipped classroom lessons on YouTube. And thank you, Professor Non, for coming, and Professor Bowie and all of you. At this time, we have hit our time limit. Unfortunately, this has been so informative, and just want to thank you again, Professor Robertson, for everything that you shared, from your experience to your tips and tricks with this classroom model. Everyone, I have gone ahead and pasted links in the chat for upcoming sessions, as well as our conference website, our virtual bookshelf, and our virtual booth. I just want to remind everyone that our next concurrent session will begin at 2 o'clock Eastern, and you can view the chat for those links for upcoming sessions. And also on our website, you can see the entire list of the conference this week for a list of the sessions and their descriptions. While accessing that website, don't forget to swing by our exhibit hall and say hello to our Hawks team. If you view a quick 5-minute demonstration, you'll be entered to win our hourly giveaway. And we have lots of great prizes. So just a few of them are your choice of a 6-month subscription to Audible, 1-year subscription to Disney Plus. So that's fun for the whole family. And then also a $100 Amazon gift card.